So, Shao, go to the stage so that everyone can hear us.
Oh, Shao is in the washroom.
Shao went to the
Yeah,
washroom,
Shao's in
Oh,
the washroom.
okay, okay.
but he'll be back soon.
He shouldn't take him too long. He's a guy.
Well, let's not stereotype, you know.
Yeah, yeah. That's true. I apologize.
I totally have to look that up. I haven't seen that one yet.
What a start to a panel. Might be number two. I'm reading my chat right now. Yeah, it was a good start. Yeah.
Where has it? Is it out now, or is it
All
just
right.
limited to some like?
Oh, I also see someone painting miniatures on their camera. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
Oh, so Xiao is here. Hello,
Yep.
Xiao.
Hi,
I
hello.
think we're complete. Should
Yay,
we start?
we are complete.
Okay. So I guess Eric,
interesting
if
change
you
of
think we
pace
should
though
start, we
instead
can
of
start
getting
already.
suddenly.
Yeah, you're actually already live on the GNG Twitch.
Wow, we're live.
Yeah, so
Hi.
go ahead,
We're
take it away.
We are live. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our panel called Humans of RPG SEA. What we're going to do right now is we're basically going to be exchanging stories and anecdotes about the RPG life in Southeast Asia. So we have here several panelists from
I wonder
different
if
countries.
how they're gonna
We will introduce ourselves one by one. Does anyone want to volunteer to start? Otherwise, I'll just go on assignments.
Why don't we just start from you and then we run down the table?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, sure. That makes sense. Okay, we'll start. My name is BJ. That is short for Buko Juice. You can also call me the Buko Man or just BJ, really. You can find my booth at booth number 63. I am bukojuice.games. That's also my website. What I do is I write about RPGs that integrate Filipino culture. And by that, I mean pre colonial histories, um, post colonial narratives, as well as all the hangups and anxieties of being Filipino. I try to integrate that into RPGs as best as I can using system agnostic settings. I also am a member of Gamers and Gaming Meets, although I am not as active as the rest of them. As you can see, I don't have the staff badge. I'm just running around having fun. So please don't resent me, fellow GNG people, for not working.
Like Eric's
But
frowning.
but anyway, that's all I think from my end. And then
it's
let's
not
go
that
to
it's a big
who is
change
beside me.
from
I think that is
visit
Ames, right? Hello.
Hello. Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Amelia. I am basically a dungeon
oh,
master.
maybe not such a
Run a
big
lot of
one because
D&D,
like
and I also run a Discord server called the Nova Tea House. That's for kind of like women and very inclusive server for RPG players in Southeast Asia. Yeah, basically it's for the non-cis dude server. And I like cats a lot. I'll pass it on to the next person.
Hi, I'm Alana. I'm one half of the Curious Chimeras. We have a booth today at Event Hall B. We are booth 56. Just look for the cats on the roof. So for myself, I'm actually pretty much, I would say in terms of DMing, I'm still pretty new, but I'm having fun right now with a table of new players as well. So new DM, new players. So I guess today's my stories will kind of stem from that sort of experience. Yep.
Hi, hello. I'm the other half of the Curious Cameras and Shaw. And yeah, I'm like just really very much of like between multiple identities. I create games together, Alana, and then sometimes to pay the bills, we run games that are not ours for on a contract basis. So we see all kinds of different play experiences because of that mercenary GM lifestyle. And we also sometimes write academically and present our games. And yeah, so we are very happy to be here to share what experiences we have. All right, BJ?
All right, cool. So before we start, I'm going to talk about the brief discussion of the format of this panel. Because this is a storytelling panel, instead of opening the floor for questions, we're going to be opening the floor periodically for any stories that you would like to share with regards to the topic that we have. We have three rough categories of stories right now. The first one will be the stories of belonging. These are anecdotes that highlight relationships that people have in your local community. Could be a fun story, it could be a heartwarming story. Well, if you're also feeling a little bit spicy, it might be a story that touches upon issues your community currently has. So, one thing that I would like to reiterate when we're talking is that if you're going to tell your story, that's okay. But you could also tell someone else's stories, but make sure that you have obtained consent from that person first, and make sure that you don't mention their names unless they have specifically consented to being named. All right. And then the next category will be stories of culture, which are anecdotes that you believe showcase the uniqueness of your own local context. Although I say unique, but it doesn't have to be unique at all. For example, I may talk about a story that highlights Filipino familial ties and how it affects RPG scheduling. Like talking about the titas and the titos of Manila and how that affects everything. But then my fellow panelists might say that it's very similar to their aunts and aunties in their own respective communities, and how that affects the relationships that they have with regards to RPGs. So that's also another thing that we are categorizing. All of our stories have to be related to the RPG scene somehow, one way or another. Okay, and then the last category that we will have for tonight will be the stories of hope. So they are anecdotes that hint at the future of your community, of our communities. All right. So without further ado, I think we will start with stories of belonging. And to set things off, I think I will start unless the other panelists want to start.
Go for it.
Okay. I think the interesting thing about stories of belonging for me is that Metro Manila is a very congested. It's a small space. I think the entirety of Metro Manila is can fit in the traditional two hexes of a hex scroll game. So that's roughly like 28 miles, if I'm not mistaken. 28 miles from north to south, and then half that from west to east. So it's not a really big place, but there's so many people here. I think there are 10 million. So we're really tight knit together. But because of the way the metropolis works, you don't really interact with a lot of people. I was talking to Mari, who is my neighbor here, and it's interesting how we ended up gaming together because we didn't even know that we were. She didn't even know that she was neighbors with Eric and Rachel for a while. And then when she started attending our RPG conventions here in Metro Manila, that's only when she realized that there are actually a lot of people who are playing RPGs that she interacts with every day. It's also similar to my partner, Momentos, and Rachel are actually office mates. And they didn't realize that they were both into RPGs until they met each other in one of the conventions. So I think that's an interesting thing of highlighting how Metro Manila feels like. It's so small but so congested. It's filled with people that you don't know are part of the community. So there, I think that's my first story to share. Um, so, is do you have any reactions to that story? Is that something that resonates with you, fellow panelists?
I think for myself, I have a story. So just picking up off on all the conventions thing. So something to note is that I feel that although there is a small and strong community of RPG players in Singapore, I find that actually a lot of the people that we ended up reaching out to at conventions are new players. So it would be things like people who come up to us and say, "Oh my goodness, I didn't realize that there was such a significant community in Singapore of RPG players." So they would quote things like what is that game, what is that show now, Stranger Things. They're like, oh my god, I watched this, I watched Stranger Things. I was always so interested to play, but I've never played it. Oh, you guys do something like that, that's so cool, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so that's my story, that people find out about RPG through our presence at conventions.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
I am just.
Do you have something to say, Ames?
Oh, okay. I think interestingly, my experience is kind of like a little bit different because I am the person who always shares about D&D to people around me. So I'm the person who introduced D&D to the workplace in my company, and I'm always kind of like, everyone should play. And yes, there is a little bit of recognition of like, oh yeah, I know it from Stranger Things, but I'm not sure, how to get started. So I'm always like, oh, join this game. I'm running on Friday, and then kind of rope people in. So unfortunately, like I guess there isn't. I don't have a similar experience of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you play too. But I'm the person who is hopefully kind of like catching more people and pulling them into the fold.
Yeah, I think definitely like that very Southeast Asian uh, city cities that basically just become like
You know,
big
have
echo
you seen a
chambers.
lot of
Like they're almost like you have this. Oh, all right, you like this, and then after you know somebody who's doing the same thing, like you've seen them once, then it's almost like you bump into them over and over again, and then like layers just kind of like just form up from there. And I really definitely do feel that because it used to be something in the past which was like, oh, okay, this is a rare breed of people who play these games, and maybe that doesn't feel so common anymore. It's just I'm like, yeah, of course people play games. Yeah, all right. It's like, like people coming up tell me like, hey, have you ever considered making character sheets similar to sushi menus so that we can modularly make characters? And I'm just like, I would never imagine the experience of basically making metaphors between character sheets and omakase menus in sushi restaurants. But there you have it. Yeah, it's become like a common enough. I think that people make analogies like this.
And it's not just the urban places, I think, because there are also, like, when I look at our community groups, there are there are people who are playing RPGs now, even outside the metropoles, so to speak. Like I see communities that are based in Baguio. I see communities that are based in Iloilo, which are while farther from Metro Manila. I don't want to call them rural because they are also developed already in their own right, right? And do you have stories that relate to that kind of belonging, like feel a feeling of belonging even though you're outside the usual centers of
because it's
what
it's
they
so
say,
basic, but
trade.
it's giving me a lot of fun vividly.
Or alternatively, if you have different stories of belonging that you would like to share, feel free to
Thank
start sharing them.
you. That raises the amount by, let me double check.
I was going to say it's hard for
Definitely, I think this
talk
pushes us
about
to
non,
over
because
450.
Singapore is one giant urban city, right?
Yeah.
But I think Amelia has some stories to share regarding the sense of belonging, and your identity versus the sense of
Wow.
belonging
So
that we were talking
much.
about sometime.
Yeah. So the non-urban thing, I'm actually from Malacca, currently based in KL, and there's definitely like more activity here, I'd say. But like going back, when I go back, I do
I
know that
hope you
there's one or
also
two game
have
shops
some
before the pandemic that were running stuff.
a lot of like
Um,
great
but that aside,
content
yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Alana. So
so
basically, I have a small. Sorry, am I the only one hearing someone else's voice? Oh, it's gone now.
Sorry, I will mute. I think you heard my partner.
No, no, I'm so sorry. Okay, so so basically around late last year, I came back from studying overseas, and I was like, I want to run games again. I hopped back into playing with people I used to play with, and then I don't know if it's coming back from having been at events in London, but being back in Malaysia, I suddenly was like, wait, I'm the only woman at these tables. And I know that there's lots of women who, love RPGs, and they've probably played for much longer than I have, or even if they're not there, they're curious to join. It's like they're there. I just need to like find them. So I did the very like basic thing of like going to a Facebook group and like, hey, I want to run a table for women. And I got actually a pretty big response, well, enough to run 2 tables, which is big for me. Like I was pretty happy with that. And when I ran those one shots, I think what I really focused on was just to make sure that it's focused on storytelling, but also I wanted to make sure the table was very kind of like open. You don't need to know all the rules. You don't need to know what a saving throw is. You just need to turn out and like share and kind of play this game. And since then, it's been about a year. It's grown into a small Discord server I've mentioned called the Naga Tea House. That's also where I run my weekly Monday game. And the thing about this little community that I have is that more than one player has kind of expressed to me like they were looking to join games, join RPG or even just D&D for some time. And there's that kind of like, I don't know where to start, and just having them tell me that they really enjoyed the game, that it was relaxed, they didn't feel intimidated. That was really great. And the server's still open to new people, and I've expanded kind of like the membership to be very clear that it's open to women, including trans women, trans men, non-binary people, and basically the intent is that it's a space for people who might not traditionally feel very represented or comfortable in a typical, MTG store. No hate on like those. I think game stores are really great, the cornerstone of the kind of community, but yeah, it's not typical, and it's a small space that at least once a week a couple of people will turn up and be silly, especially in the middle of a pandemic. It's good to have that routine. And so even if it's for this small community, like small table, it's my little community. It's my little story.
Hey, thank you, Ames. That actually brings up an interesting point because for the longest time, RPG communities have generally been like, sorry to say, male dominated, right? But do you think it has gotten better for everyone else, or do you think there's still a lot of work to be done, or are both of those statements true? But before anyone in the panel answers, I also want to talk to the audience again and say that if you have a similar story that you would like to share, feel free to go to the chicken with the microphone in front of the stage, and we will try to entertain you as best we can. Entertain not in the dance kind of way. Entertain in the accommodate kind of way. English hard, guys. Anyway, going back to the question, do you think that it has gotten better, and do you think there's a lot more work to be done, or are both of those true, or anyway, take that away.
I see Pam running around. Pam, are you trying to tell us something? Are you trying to talk to us?
Yeah, actually, would like to hear from Pam if Pam is
Come on
interested
where
in
I'm
saying,
standing.
Hi.
hello,
Hello,
Pam.
fans.
Pam.
I know I owed BJ a story, but like for me, of course you're gonna hear Sin in the background a little bit because they're running a game. But I think that it's been a wild experience in terms of RPGs. My experience in the Philippines has been you huddle with your friends and then you just enjoy your own little corner. But that might have been informed by the fact that obviously I am a woman and I'm queer. So when gamers and gaming meets, which is then G&G, started like roping me into community activities, I was like, oh, there are other people and they're not so bad, which is really really nice, right? It's hard not to talk about it for me. I think many people already know that I'm quite outspoken about how like the spaces have a long way to go. But the truth of the matter is, and this is something that I also accept, the work is constant. Especially if you are coming from a country that has particularly conservative values that intersect with a lot of progress, which I think is generally the experience that a lot of us share in Southeast Asia. You've got a lot of like interesting, cool things happening, but you also have a lot of pushback, and that can be very hard, especially in a hobbyist space. So I kind of tried to create my own spaces, and much of that was inspired by the fact that gamers and GMs existed. So the lesson that I took away from it was you have to make your own space for it to be a better, wider community. So I think that's my kind of like short and long response and anecdote to what DJ was talking about.
Thank you, Pam. That's really appreciated. And I think that's also something that I am sort of familiar with. Of course, my lens is a little bit it's a little bit limited because I also have a lot of privilege on me. I am a straight male, and I am also um, of a general look that my city is okay with, if that makes sense. So I have a lot of privilege, but at the same time, I also noticed that I had to put in some work to make my spaces more welcoming, because as a general rule, a person like me will be accepted by the RPG community, the local RPG community, because of who I am. And when I was coming in back in the early 2000s, the dudes at the time were like, a new protege that I can mold in my image, so that they will GM in my style. That was the scene at the time. And I felt that it was easy for me, but not as easy for people who are not like me to get into the space. So there was an active attempt for me to be accommodating to people who are not like me. And that is my small contribution to that. But and it's a thing that I keep on. It's a constant work, as Pam has said. So for me, I try to always listen to people and listen to their points of view, because these are points of view that I do not have. All right. Um, does anyone else have a comment about that or a similar story to share?
Yeah, I think I can sound off and echo on something like that. I think like for I think for about a year to two, I think about 2 years, I think I worked in a game store. So it's like one of those MTG stores that Ames is talking about, and it's like it was also quite interesting because I was hired. Like the boss is a friend, and I was hired. And he said, "Could you please make D&D less old boyish?" Then I said, "Sure." It's like so that was pretty much like my corporate portfolio. Make D&D less a game of like old boy networks, and it simultaneously, I guess, was enlightened self-interest, because from my ex-boss's perspective, it's market acquisition, right? It's like there's more people buying the games, it's good for the company. But then of course behind the scenes, like this is a totally different conversation, but we shall not be talking about essentially like the art of franchising. But another thing is really pretty much he also sensed the atmosphere that was shifting. There were children coming in with the parents asking if they could play D&D, and then the old boys who were sitting in the corner and talking about how back in the 90s, their third generation vampire werewolf abomination with mage powers, because it was a 7 height NPC or whatever, was basically kind of like the bee's knees. Or you had like the age lords who were like, my game is for mature audiences only, and then it's like which basically usually means some kind of like 13-year-old Dear Diary, I wish to kill God. It's like it's like usually something like that. And he was looking at all that and was like, nah, there got to be something more. There's got to be. But how do we build it? How do we transform from oh boys into a place where theoretically anyone could feel welcome? And for us, I think like the answer then was basically, okay, let's do weekly tables, and let's basically invite anybody to run games. And even then, despite such a hierarchical relationship where connect yourself into a group, try to run games, you do have people coming in as like, oh, I've been running games since dinosaurs were around. I drank the sacred water of Lake Wisconsin. I'm closer to Gygax than you are, whatever, right? So it's like we got to Lake Geneva fanboys coming in, and you got this idea that they wanted to come in and say, hey, you look like you have promise, you look like talent. Maybe you can run games to my standards. You got this very nagging behavior. And in the past, I think people would actually believe in it before the internet, before more communities were found. But today, people are just like, okay, sure, for maybe one session, two sessions, and people just splinter off, form their own things, and never tap back into this supposed experts anymore. And I just really feel very happy that to be part of breaking monopolies on belonging and allowing new gardens of belonging to flourish, because it's a game, right? It's a practice. When you play it, you practice it with other people, and by default you are the community. You don't need like somebody to grant you the community key, right? And it's very funny because those old guard that I am thinking of right now, a lot of times they accuse the approaches we're doing of horizontalizing access as being gatekeeping. It's like it's very much of like the gatekeepers like to accuse others of gatekeeping, and then it's really quite odd. And but generally, I find them highly irrelevant. Just as they find me highly irrelevant, they probably have their own spaces. But that's the beauty of it. We can all find new spaces, play more games, and there isn't marketing only to one segment of us anymore.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Xiao. That's a very comprehensive look at that. As someone who's also approaching old boy territory myself, I'm already in my 30s. That's one of the important things that we need to distinguish for ourselves. Like the community is not about us, guys. A community is not centered on you, and there's a tendency to think like that because RPGs in general, most RPGs at least, have a GM and players, and there's like this normal hierarchy that we have to actively avoid. So there. The does anyone else have comments about stories of belonging? Otherwise, we can move on to stories of culture. Okay, so our next topic is going to be stories of culture, basically showcasing the uniqueness of our own local context. But interestingly, the story that I have for stories of culture is actually related to Xiao, because Xiao has visited the Philippines twice already. Twice, was it? In relation to RPGs. And on his first visit here, I was actually reminded of this just a few hours ago. When he first visited here, we took him to Jollibee. Okay, so we were eating there, and when he was looking at the menu, I gave him like the secret sauce of Jollibee, because in the menu you have a one-piece chicken joy. It's basically one piece of chicken with rice and a medium soda, medium Coke. And then you have a two-piece chicken joy, which is a two pieces of chicken, one rice, and a medium Coke. Now, the one piece chicken joy is, if I'm not mistaken, 91 pesos. That's roughly under $2 US dollars. And then the two piece chicken joy is 165 pesos. So you would think that the two piece chicken joy is actually cheaper. But if you think about it, if you order the two piece chicken joy, you're not going to be eating just one serving of rice. You're going to order extra rice. And how much is the extra rice? That's 25 pesos. So yeah, one from 165 plus 25, now you're now at 190, right? And then you're probably not going to be happy with a medium-sized Coke. You're going to upgrade to large. That's another 14 pesos. So that brings you up to 204 pesos. And how much do you have? A large Coke is actually has less Coke in it than two pieces of medium Coke. So if you order two pieces of one piece chicken joy, two orders of one piece chicken joy, you actually spend 182 pesos and get more value than a two piece chicken joy with an upgraded rice and an upgraded Coke. So I told Xiao that little piece of inside information, and he was really really happy about that. So that's for me like a story of basically sharing my own little bit of culture with another person who is also part of the RPG sphere. So, do you have similar stories, or do you have reactions to that? Also, for the audience, if you have stories of culture that you would like to share with the panel, just let us know.
Shout, does BJ know what you ate for dinner?
He does, because I tried, because seeing has how many chickens there are in today's convention, and knowing that I have a very busy evening, and decided to order in food instead of going out for food, and I decided to order Jollibee in honor of our Philippines-based organizers for this. And I tried to order two pieces of chicken joy, but alas, the algorithms here do not allow me to do so. BJ, I've been thwarted by Singaporean bureaucracy. Okay, which I guess is a story in itself. Okay, like Singaporeanized Jollibee. But like I guess I can actually jump on for a story that's linked back to BJ and Momatos, all right? Because when they visited Singapore and live in my place, this is like we went to a temple. We went to a Thai temple among other places, and like there was a statue of Brahma in a Thai Buddhist temple, and then there were many offerings of coconut juice, which is well buko juice, right, which is BJ's namesake, right? And then it's like BJ asked, so does this god really like coconuts? And then I'm like, I do not know if Brahma likes coconuts, but I'm like, yeah, I guess he is all things, so coconuts probably. And like, sure. And I think it was something either BJ or Bianca said, which is like, well, I guess coconuts are the perfect embodiment of emptiness. I guess is a good way to understand moksha because it's hollow inside. Then I was like mind blown because I come from the culture and I'm a practicing Buddhist. Then I will never have associated coconuts with emptiness. But I took someone from another culture coming in gamifying something. I was like, wow. So I think it's really this cross pollination that sometimes just this little throwaway perspectives that make things good. But about the Jollibee, I don't remember the chicken as much as I remember the limbo of the driving back and forth the 3 times because we were looking for a drive-through that will accept us, and then that's what I remember the most. And then the lecture took place during that time. So nothing I learned about Manila was also about traffic and about the people saying, hi, we can't make it for a game in the evening because I'm still at work and I won't be able to make it. And it did not occur to me coming from a small city like Singapore that traffic would be enough to basically scuttle plans for 4 to 5 hours if you were lucky in Metro Manila. I think that was a TNU game that you were running, BJ. That I think somebody couldn't make it for the night, I think, or something. Or either I was running TNU or you were running TNU. But I think it's all these small things that make me really cognizant of culture and and the air and we breathe, the water we drink, how different it all is.
Yes, I'd like to verify that data. Here in Metro Manila, if traffic adds plus or minus 4 hours to the travel time, depending on the moods of the traffic gods. So it can be really frustrating sometimes. But also can't blame the players, right? The player could leave like 2 hours before the game starts and still be late, and that's not their fault because it just so happens that there was a sale somewhere and it has adversely affected traffic. That's one of the drawbacks of living in a city or in a metropolis, a collection of cities that doesn't really have an efficient traffic management system. Anyway, I want to throw the ball over to Ames if you have a story of culture that you would like to share.
Yeah, so basically, I was thinking about sharing what it's like being a how do I put this? I just TLDR how I explain D&D to my mom because I started playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was in uni, and I don't live at home with my parents, so I would kind of be like off somewhere in PJ with my friend until past midnight. So imagine one of these days, and my mom calls me, and I'm like, "Hi, I'm playing games with friends." Kind of just keeping it vague because I'm not clubbing, I'm not doing drugs. This is fine. I'm just at a guy's house in the living room with 5 other grown men on a Wednesday night. So eventually I kind of explained it as like board games because my mom, they understand Monopoly and Scrabble. We have those at home. And interestingly, it's not until more recently, last year, when I'm back home playing in Malacca and I run a game and my mom would be walking by and I'd be kind of like running a game with my friends and I'd be like, I don't know if I'll be able to let this go for 30 gold. You see, I need to feed my family. And she's just there and I'd look at her and she just walks off. So it took some time to actually sit down to have this chat with her to explain what I do with my friends. My mom kind of comes from a generation of adults don't play games, children play games, adults do work. Like you die a little every day, and then you watch TV after dinner, and then you rinse and repeat. Okay, so I kind of I knew that that's how she was brought up, but she's actually pretty respectful of my time when I say I have plans with friends from 8 till 11. So that's really nice. And I had the conversation last year where I was like, okay, I have friends. We kind of meet up nowadays online and we tell stories to each other. And that's like the simplest way to explain it. You know, it's kind of like creating worlds, solving riddles, but ultimately it's the story. And I have like a friend who once described D&D in a way that I really like. He said, it's like you're part of a play, but you're the director, you're the actors, and you're also the audience at the same time. You're kind of taking all of those roles. And I think, my mom kind of gets it a little. She might not fully get it, but she listened. That was really, I think, meant a lot to me. And yeah, that's a start. Maybe the 2021 goal is to run something where my mom is a player, but we'll see.
Yeah, and that's actually an aspect I don't want to speak for everyone in the panel, but for Filipinos at least, this is one big difference between Filipinos and like people from the West, is that we living with our parents well into our 20s and 30s is not a taboo. It's actually sort of expected in a sense, because why would you live alone? You if you're here, we can still continue to feed you and we can continue to help with your expenses, and in turn you can also help with the house's expenses. So the living alone is more of the exception, I think, in Filipino culture. If there are Filipinos in the audience, feel free to contradict me if I am misreading this. But also, is this something that is similar to the other countries that are being represented in this panel?
Yeah, for Singapore, definitely yes. I actually moved out of. So typically in Singapore, well into your 20s and 30s, like you said, unless we get married beforehand. And then even then, sometimes the wait for the housing here can be 4 or 5 years. So some people who get married before their house is ready still have to live with their parents. So like a married couple with their parents. For me, I am in the minority. So before I got married, I was actually living by myself for maybe about 3 years. Um, and there was a lot of grief from my parents about that. Yeah, but yeah. So I think for Singapore, at least, it's still quite common.
I guess I also mentioned like yeah, in Malaysia it is pretty common, and the exception is like yeah, if you get married. But there are some people that use it as a flex to because we don't have like housing in like Singapore, the planning and everything. So I do know a few people who are living alone, but it is less common, I think, and especially in this past year, more people are like staying with family when they can.
Yeah, I think the pandemic has changed things a little bit because now it's actually move back in with the family. They can afford better internet. So if I'm living on my own, I have to make do with shittier internet. So do we have other stories of culture that you want to share with everyone? Also from the audience, if there's anything you'd like to share. All right, if there's nothing else, we can move on to our last. We're making good time actually. We're only 30 minutes in to our last category, which is stories of hope, anecdotes that hint at the future of your community. I don't have an opening story for this one. Does anyone have a story that they would like to share off the cuff?
Yeah, I think I can go.
Go ahead,
So
Alana.
it's kind of related to whatever Amelia was talking about earlier with regards to and what Pam said about women in the RPG community. Of course, I speak specifically for my experience only. So I have the good fortune of entering the RPG community in Singapore through Shao, which meant that the friends that I made, the people that I hung out with, be it in Singapore or across the shores, tended to be of, how do I put it, very open minded, very accepting and things like that. So me naively thought that this would be the same for the RPG community in Singapore. And the first sense of how wrong I was came about when it was one of our first events that we were running, Chimeras and I, and the initial discussion for the event had been done by Shao. And then when it came to the day of the event itself, I was there earlier and I was trying to And mind you, I was with the person who Xiao was in contact with, so he knew who I was. And as I was talking to the person behind the counter, whom I had been introduced to as Xiao's business partner, I was not acknowledged. So when I asked a question, the person behind the counter would first look at the guy beside me and answer him when he asked the question again. And when we were talking about the money that came from the event, I said, yeah, you can hand it to me. You just do a count, I'll do the counter count. And he gave me that look again, like, who are you again? And then again, he looked at, the guy. So this is before Xiao arrived. And then once Xiao arrived, Xiao was like, oh yeah, didn't she talk to you already? And suddenly everything changed. Like, oh, okay, so you're the one. All right. Yeah, sure. And I'll hand over the name list to you and things like that. So but that's it. I think that was early on. And so now we're talking about the hope, right? The change that happened, and that was maybe 2 years ago. And I think actually community has grown and changed since then. Since we've been a little bit more active in the scene. So these same people who look past me actually wave to me now at conventions. So I think that's a great step up. They can actually recognize me. Yeah, so I think that's my story for sense of hope. Obviously, as everyone said earlier, I think it's a work in progress. It is still a growing thing, and there are a lot of female players actually. I think Xiao runs for a group of mermaids, like the professional mermaids who swim in the Mermaid Tales. So I think the scene is getting more and more diverse and really growing. Yeah.
That also reminds me of, because Pam and I are both moderators slash administrators in the local Philippine tabletop RPG group, and when she started, she was challenged a lot about moderating. Like when she would say to in the Facebook group as a moderator, okay guys, this is not cool because XYZ. She would actually be challenged. Like other people will say, well, what are you talking about? That's incorrect. X, Y, and Z are okay. And then what my job back then was is to go, I think Pam is right. XYZ is a problem. And then suddenly they will all listen to me. Oh, right. BJ said so. So it must be true. And I'm like, what? But that was my job. I don't really need to outthink Pam or anything like that. If Pam says something, in most cases, I agree with her. And even when I don't agree with her, it's usually not because of the nuance of what she was trying to do. It was more of a difference of opinion only. So that was generally my job. But I think now Pam is a very well respected member of the local community, although there are still people who, um, foolishly challenge her, in my opinion, because whenever someone challenges Pam, at this point, I'm like, you fool.
And the popcorn comes out.
Get popcorn,
Oh yeah.
prepare the coffin for the poor person. So there. Do you have other stories to share from Shao or Abe's?
Sure. Oh, okay. It's kind of it's not it's just a very short story, but like when you asked us to think about something about the future of our community, I kind of felt that rush of guilt for not doing more, and I think that that's something that some people can really agree with, where it's like, oh, I have a thing now, and I need to keep pushing up the thing, and I need to keep running events and running quizzes and kind of promoting it, but then I'm grateful that I spoke to my friends. They reminded me that like it's okay not to, do everything, and sometimes surviving is enough. And I am really grateful that our little server exists. It's like a little bubble on the corner of my Discord that, for me, it's something I really look forward to hopping into. And I think that if I can make even a couple of other people feel that way, that's pretty good for me. That I don't need to be everything, and especially because there's so many other amazing people who are also kind of pushing towards making changes in their own space.
I also have some stories of hope. I think it's just a larger level observation. I feel like when Chimeras first began like when my company first was created, like a long time ago. Before it was a company, it was pretty much just me running RPGs that for kids, so that to help them learn language and math a lot better. I was just basically using games to get learning around. There was this a long time ago, and it's something that I forgot. Then it's like and I think a couple of years ago, then I got a message from, I think, Eliza at Net20, right? It's like, oh yeah, I read the paper that you wrote about games and empowerment of like individuals and communities. And for me, it was always like this, like, oh, okay, I have to do a lot of things to help people in games because nobody seemed to be doing it. But that's me with my memory of time from maybe 10 to 15 to 20 years ago. And now I look around and it's like, I see like, for example, Sam, right? Like Sam Wee is like, interested in doing work on therapy. And in Singapore as well, there's people who are working with D&D and other RPGs to engage kids and help families. And also like Eliza also just now in her own talk was also talking about clinical therapy and games as well. And it's like, I think like for me, the power of play as things to bond people and to help our families and people grow is the story of hope that I feel I see across Asia. I think like also like coming back over to the thing that Ames said earlier, like the adults work and children play, right? But now it's like there's a little bit of like for this very post-colonial societies, like we have to survive, we have to become stronger than the people that colonize us. But it's like after that, then what's that, right? And then like I think like the kind of feelings of alienation, isolation, and lack of communication, also the kind of cultural adriftness. I really feel like the games that we play, the stories that we tell, the things that we use to tell these stories, is really something which I feel very hopeful about. And I think like more and more people will do this, and more people even use it for medical, therapeutic, as well as just helping their kids, helping their families bond together. That just makes me happy. Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button for a while. I was where's my unmute button? Okay, that's true actually. In terms of belonging today, I feel like we have come a long way, but like Pam said, it's constant work. I I have the privilege now of, like I said earlier when the panel started, I am a member of G&G, but I don't really work so much anymore. And I think that is a testament to how the scene here in the Philippines has evolved. Because back then, it had to be me, because it had to be the dude who is going to be listened to. It had to be the dude who's opened the doors, who will open the doors to everyone else, because it used to be a dude space. But now I don't really have to work as much, although occasionally there are still instances where I'm like, all right, I have to say something about this current situation, and I have to help in addressing it and fixing it. But I'm no longer in the lead, and that's for me that's pretty good. So I was looking at some of the comments, and Rachel has also mentioned that when she is in relation to Aim's story earlier, when she is when she is explaining to her mother that she is going to play a game, Rachel's mother is like, "All right, you're going to play your mahjong." So it's like that's how they understand it, and I guess to them it's like that's the game that adults play. So yeah, that makes sense. So we are actually we actually have about 13 minutes left in this panel. So what we're going to do is I think we're going to open the floor for any other stories that people would like to share. If you have a story about the feeling of belonging in your scene, or a story of that hints at the future of RPGs, or even a story or an anecdote about your local culture that you would like to share, even if you're from outside the general RPG SEA region and you want to share something about your own local culture, feel free to do so. And also, there's a general open panel, an open invite for the rest of the panelists to share stories that they haven't shared yet, that they have prepared. Does anyone
There's
want
a
to?
question from the Twitch stream that I'm seeing. So Keely WP asks, that is really interesting. Any thoughts on what worked well in opening up this scene with regards to women becoming more respected and listened to in TTRPG spaces? So I think, and this sounds a little bit horrible, I guess, to say. I think what really worked for me was that I had someone at my back, someone who was in that particular position of power, who was able to say, why are you not listening to what she says? So in this case, it was actually a lot of Shao who would offer me that space to be at the front, and then as time went on, that we could kind of like oh, I could be more well known or I could be more recognized in the scene, and then I was given my own space. So I think having like if you are in a position of power, be it as a male or anyone, any type of power. For myself, obviously, as a Chinese majority in Singapore, etc., etc., we should lend our space when we can, and support other people who cannot. And so I think to make the space more inclusive, more open, that's something that all of us have to kind of keep in mind. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So if you are in a position of privilege, do your part, help out. I think that's the basic of it, right? Any other questions or stories that people would like to share? Feel free. We don't bite. Just approach the chicken. Oh, here, this is Jack from.
I'm from Blue Studios from Myanmar. Hi, I'm Jack.
Hello, Jack.
We're doing this. We're currently working on producing a game called Moonsoon. Okay. Just want to say, guys, I really appreciate listening to you guys and hearing about explaining what you're doing to your parents. It means a lot to me because my whole family still has no idea what I'm doing when I say I work in games. So it's a really great thing to hear. And from my side, it's more of a story of both. It's a story. It's a mixture of hope and culture, I guess. For us, I am one of the lucky fews to be able to enjoy what tabletop RPGs are 3 years ago, and one of the first few DMs in the city, and we've been trying so hard to introduce more people to the hobby, actually turn this into something that people can enjoy as more than just a fun time thing, but something that brings people together. Me and Kai have been working together on this little channel, and at some point when Ames told us like you felt guilty, and then it brings those memory back because I was trying to we were trying to make content in Burmese so that more people will be joining in. But when there was the low reception, we decided to drop it simply because, oh yeah, nobody listens to us. Why do we keep doing it? And then we just figured that we're going to make a game of our own. And we got together with our team and started doing Moonsoon. But when I first joined the pre-con 3 days ago and met so many people who are into RPG in Southeast Asia, it just fills me with joy to see that there are so many other people like us who are in their 20s and 30s and still playing games, and there's nothing wrong with it, and that's the beauty. And I felt like, you know what, and also when Rachel said that it took you guys 6 years to bring all of these people together, and we just give up after 6 months. It just made me realize that there's so many more things that we can do, and I just want to say I want to do more. Just looking at you guys, and thank you for this, and thank you for bringing everybody together. Just want to say that.
Ray, actually, direct your thanks to the GNG crew. This panel and this convention in general has been largely a big success because of their efforts. They are doing a lot of things on the side right now that that are very important to making sure that everything is running smoothly, right? But also, Moonsoon at booth number 78, was it? I saw some of your tweets a few days ago, and I haven't really visited your booth yet. But I'm interested in the game that you're developing. I saw your mini of the octopus person and your
Yes,
and the
easily.
person. I really want to visit you later. So maybe after my panels are done, I'll check that out.
Thank you. We'll love to see you guys as well.
And also, I lost my thought. I'm sorry. Anyway, any other stories? Any other things that anyone would like to share? I see Mikey. Mikey, do you want to share something?
Yeah, step up for the market.
Hi. I'm not sure if this is working. Okay, I think it's working. Wow, it's like a real convention, all the social anxiety that comes with it. Anyway, yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone. Just that there was a talk how far the community has come, and it's still growing. And I just wanted to thank everyone for getting us to this point. Putting in the work every day and just making the space more inclusive and more than that, hopeful. But I guess in my case, I just wanted to ask a question, I guess, to the panelists. Coming from the RPGC region, I'm Mikey, by the way, from the Philippines. Very much experiencing much of the post-colonial mentality and the culture that comes with that upbringing. And for my part, I just feel disconnected. I think this came up in one of the talks earlier, where I could say I'm Asian, I'm Filipino, but I'm also Chinese, and I also have some Spanish heritage. So it's kind of like this confluence of different cultures, and I feel like I'm caught not at a fork in the road, but at like a cultural crossroads where there are no traffic rules and there's no traffic enforcer. Which brings me to the fact that as a creator or as a director or as a game master, as a writer, someone to tell stories, I feel like I don't have any ownership or creative authority to write any of these stories that is in my blood pool. So it's lack of a better term. Because even in my daily life, people can't see past his face. In my workspace, they think I'm Chinese. And when I speak Tagalog and I say that I'm Filipino, they see an accent. You're not Filipino enough. And even if you are, they're still going to question that and say, why do you have a kind of American accent? Or why do you keep speaking English to us? I can't even speak Chinese. So they say you're fake Chinese. And it's gotten to this point where at this level, I love the awareness coming out of taking back Asian representation and emboldening people to represent us better. That it came up in one of the talks earlier where stereotypes are very harmful, but they are not all untrue, they're incomplete. But I'm just wondering, like, if you have any advice for someone who can't really identify to any of their cultural identities, where people will rag on you for saying, you can't write that, you're not Filipino, or you can't write this, you don't know anything about our own culture. In fact, it's a great shame I bear because I feel more comfortable writing in the context of Western cultures because I barely know anything about my own local Filipino mythology. So, but I can't write those because they say, you're not white, you're not American. You don't know anything about suburban living. All you consume is pop culture. So in a way, I ashamedly identify with pop culture rather than any of the things I was brought up with. So it's this weird amalgamation. And in terms of the question of creative authority, where there are proponents of people, and I do agree mostly with what they say that if you are not of the demographic, you should have a long, hard think about coming up with something, that is not of your own culture. So I always struggle with that every day, whenever, even just running through games as a funnel of my own experience, because I feel like I don't have the authority to speak about any of these stories. Someone who went to study Philippine mythology, whatever color or race he is, would definitely know more about it and be more of an authority, I believe, than me. Even if they say that you're Filipino, you have authority to write over it. So sorry, it's just a long-winded everything. But I guess my question is really, how do you go about cultural creative authority? And us a lot in this auditorium, probably also from countries that were colonized, how do we navigate this in terms of, because for some reason it's like free game to use European folklore because it's so used in the mainstream media that it's become the quote unquote aesthetic standard for the greater majority of the RPG share. So anyone else can use and appropriate this culture, whatever Norse mythology, Slavic folklore, and the like. But when I can't even feel confident in writing about my own cultural lived experience, where does this authority lie, and how do you go about it in telling stories?
Okay, I think that there's a lot to unpack there. So before I have some things to say, but before that, I want to ask the rest of the panel if they want to start first. Meanwhile, random side question to the staff. I think we are at 9:30, so can we extend it to answer this question? Go ahead, if you have something to say.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You're greenlit.
Okay. Yeah, I have. I guess I have something to respond. I'll guess like to at least part of the question, but I think mostly about authority, about creative authority. I think cultural creative authority. I feel like yeah, definitely it resonates a lot with me as a Singaporean, I guess, because it's like we're a city, there's a country with no. For me personally, it's like it's very hard to say that this is authentically Southeast Asian or whatever. But at the same time, there's something that I think like in archaeology class is like I read this line which is like the things that we can know of the past are always less than what we don't know. It's like we have material records that come up and then that changes what we know or what we can think we can know of the past. But until then, everybody goes on and has a certain shape of what they think history looks like, right? And until proven otherwise, even after proven otherwise, large bunches of people's lived experiences may not connect with that because people want to believe in things. For me, I come from a small country that, and we're terrified of basically large empires, like even regional empires. But maybe my friends and my colleagues across in other parts of Asia, of Southeast Asia, may see pride in the imperial past, where their countries were once the most powerful in the world. But for me, as a descendant of immigrants who left imperial blood strife, coming to a country that got colonized and producing a post-colonial me, I'm terrified of empires. So I would never create a game where empire is like the default heroism, and that's part of my lived experience. That's part of my identity. That's part of my fear of empires. And I would say this is indicative of an Asian experience because other people may have a nationalistic cultural pride of an empire that shows what their culture was supposedly good at. But I don't think I'm less Asian for the part. And I think it's also a bit of a double standard, I feel, because it's like, as you said, like a lot, as Mikey has said, European folklore, etc., becomes like open access, becomes a cultural commons that we can draw into. But it becomes very sensitive because a matter of authenticity, like who owns this, and the colonizer and the colony, I guess, and the colonized don't usually have the same standards when it comes to open access, right? And I feel like in terms of sensitivity, it's important to respect people's heritage or authenticity. But at the same time, when there are people who say you're not authentic enough because you don't follow a certain thing about, you don't have a certain identity marker, then I just remind myself that that's the same road that heads down towards ethno-nationalism, that heads down towards essentialism. And that's the same thing that even before the European colonizers came to Southeast Asia, we were genociding each other because of these things anyway. So to look back at the past and say we were always good before that is just, I think, a fool's quest, an illusion. And so I think like if I was like, I don't know whether this will help you, whether this kind of affinity help you, but when I get that you're not Chinese enough, you're not whatever enough. For me, usually I think it's like, it's somebody projecting their own identities onto me rather than anything else. Yeah. Yeah, so that's my two copper pieces.
Okay. Alana or Ames, do you have input on that?
I feel like this is a lot to unpack for me. So, like, just right now, I don't have like a full answer, but I just want to like sound off on what Xiao said on like, um, for those people who say that you're not something enough, like, I don't think you will be ever X enough for them because they have their own kind of, their own issues, and really, it's not your issue. So, yeah.
Okay. I think I also have some comments about that. I will start with regards to some of that. We will be touching about that in our next panel, which is comprehend languages as a cantrip. So it's a discussion about languages and how it affects our RPGs and how it is a factor to our own identities. But with regards to that, there was actually it actually happens quite a bit also with the Sina Una team when we were when we are when we were writing about Sina Una, especially with our Philam friends who are also writing on Sina Una. They get challenged a lot by the local Filipinos because they're like, but you don't even speak Tagalog. And to me, my answer to that is that who cares, guys? It's you're Filipino. They're Filipino in their blood, just like us. So they have a different context, and that changes the way they tell their stories in a little bit because they have different lived experiences. But that doesn't make it any less Filipino. And I think that is the important thing. When you are a Filipino, when you are a Singaporean, you're a Malaysian, other Southeast Asian country, and then you create a game or you create something, then by virtue of you being of that nationality or that ancestry, then your game will be Filipino, will be Chinese. It doesn't have to we don't have to be constrained on the political definition of what a Filipino is. For example, you're not any less Filipino just because you don't have a Filipino passport and instead you have an American passport because you grew up in America while your parents migrated there, for example. So I think that's the first one. If you create something, then that's automatically of your ancestry for me. And then the second one is with regards to people who research mythologies and culture. And like Xiao said, that's true. There's actually a lot of speculation with that. Like if we talk about pre-colonial Filipino cultures and myths, there's a lot of guesswork involved. Because most of what we know is either written by the colonizer or is extrapolated from what little pieces of pottery we were able to dig from ancient sites and us extrapolate. Oh, because of this pot, they probably used this pot to pour soup or something like that. That's the best we can do, and then try to connect it with our own lived experiences in the present and hopefully have a connection. But that is only an approximation of what the ancestors actually did. We can't replicate it exactly. So doing your research helps. If you want to write about Filipino mythology, it would be good to actually look at the material and research, but at the same time, that is not a bar that you need to clear for me. As long as you write what you know and you write with your heart and you don't actually have any malice intended, and if you don't have any malice intended, I think you should be fine. Okay, so I want to ask the staff if we have time, or otherwise we will adjourn. But if not, we could add maybe one more question or one more story. Paging staff. Okay. So if there's nothing else, there you go. There's Eric.
The next talk anyway is yours, so I leave the decision of how long you want to go up to you, BJ.
Well, it's not
As the
mine
person
per
most
se.
affected.
I'm not moderating the next one, but I am a part of it, I guess. All right. Alana, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I was gonna say that Shao's running a game at 10, so has to end sometime before that.
Cool. So I guess we should adjourn already. We are already like 10 minutes over time. So I don't want to keep everyone. So that is it. That is our Humans of RPG SEA. I hope you enjoyed our short storytelling time and have fun with the rest of the convention. We are here until 12 midnight, if I'm not mistaken.
The 12
All right.
midnight will be
So thank you everyone for showing up, and bye. See you around. We will be walking around.
Chimeras is at booth B56, so please drop by and say hi if you want to hear more stories or come and chat with us and things like that. Oh, Shao is running a game at D6, I think, or D3, D3. So if you want to hear more about our demo game that we're running, Near Gods, based on ancient Southeast Asian lore, culture, history, please feel free to spectate. So that's going on starting at 10.
All right, cool. Ames, do you have any last things to say?
Thank everyone for coming, and yeah, check out other Chimera's booth. They're really cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks again, everyone, and goodbye. Or see you around, rather.
See you.
I should probably like leave the station.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you also to everyone who came up and shared. That's all very much appreciated.
Yeah.
See you in the next talk.
Yeah.